Yo, 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 welcome to the Trail Mix. This is your mix of all kinds of tricks. This is going to be a very special episode today. If you're listening, we usually have a guest on every once in a while. Well, to mention that we've only had one guest so far. But this is going to be our good old second one. And we have our dear friend, Carly Conklin. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. How's everybody?
Hi, Carly.
Hello.
So we wanted to try and dive into something like that today.
What a coincidence.
Wow! How about that? It's almost like it was planned.
No, we don't plan these things. What are you talking about?
This is all off the cuff.
I totally believe that.
If it was all off the cuff, exactly. If it was all off the cuff, it would sound as horrible as that intro that I just did. But anyways, so yeah,
it was bad.
Exactly. But anyways, yeah. So our main topic is, well, don't know. I don't have a fancy title for it, but essentially is that we all love hard copies of books, and we don't want it to change.
What about paper copies?
We don't want it to go away. Oh my goodness. Physical books
printed on paper.
Yes. Yeah. Carly, do you have a way to introduce it?
Sure. Want me to introduce myself at all, or?
Sure, if you want to.
Okay, cool. So for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Carly, and I am a librarian and a writer by night. And so that's kind of course, why I think physical books are very important to me, because, I'm a librarian, and I get the question a lot of, are libraries still viable? Do people still read books? And people are always surprised when I say yes. Lots of people still come to the library and check out actual physical copies of books. So that's kind of, I thought that would be a good subject to talk about today.
Yeah, that's awesome. It is actually kind of surprising, like you would think that with all these digital changes that have been coming to every single medium out there, you think that it would have been just a niche by now.
Wait, so
yeah.
Do people come to the library and ask this question, or do they ask you this question in other places?
So they ask me more other places. People at the library are usually not surprised.
What? People come to the library?
As they're standing in the library.
Although we do occasionally get a lot of people who are coming just to renew their card because they only use our digital resources.
Oh,
gotcha.
Most of the times I get that question, it's because I've introduced myself as a librarian, and so people are like, "Oh, cool. Is that a viable career choice?"
Yeah.
There's still librarians.
People still read?
Where they keep a whole bunch of books or something, like movies, maybe. Is it like a Blockbuster?
Exactly. It's just
that's
what do you guys do all day? Well,
yeah.
That's actually a really good analogy, Jackie, because that's what I've been thinking about too, is that we don't have that anymore really for movies. The only thing closest to that is Redbox.
Yeah, I mean, the library that I always went to in North Carolina had tons of movies, so I was like, oh, this is cool. I can just borrow the movies and watch them and then just bring them back for free. Versus like Blockbuster or Redbox, you've gotta dish out the cha-ching.
Exactly.
Sure, and it's
Especially
definitely interesting, like how many people still come to the library for DVDs too, like even with all the streaming services.
True.
Definitely. Yeah, that's actually why that is one of my justifications for my large movie library that I have, is because of the flip-floppity and wishy-washiness of streaming sites. Now,
Hmm.
Disney Plus is an
Yeah.
exclusion because as far as I know, Disney Plus hasn't and doesn't take anything off. But I know in the past, Netflix and Prime, their selection choices fluctuate every once in a while.
Oh yeah.
It's true.
From
Sure.
what I've noted, they actually go the tides kind of go in and out with the surges and re-releases of physical copies. Actually,
Interesting.
Really?
yeah, I've noticed that, like especially with Prime, if something is not free anymore on Prime, it's because that the physical DVD or Blu-ray is being distributed and being sold again in the stores.
Wow.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if it goes the other
Mhm.
way too, because I feel like there's definitely been movies that I've gone out and bought because I got used to watching them on Netflix or Amazon Prime, and then they were gone, and I was like, oh, well, I still want to watch this. So
How sneaky
Yeah,
of them.
exactly. Well, it keeps things, it keeps if you're going for that movie, it keeps you restricted to one so that they can keep the revenue streams going, Because if they were selling the DVD and you could stream it free anyways, you're not going to buy the DVD.
This is true.
makes sense.
So,
Unless you just really want it on DVD.
true. Anyway, sorry, I started to realize that we were going off track. So wrapping that
That's
back
a fun
to
tangent.
Yeah, I was gonna say, movies and books are kind of opposite end of the spectrums, even though they're very similar.
true. Yep.
Same
I-
side.
why-
I'm sorry, same coin, different side.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it is surprising. Like even now thinking about it, even though I haven't been to a public library in a good bit, I can still see that some people would go, still go to to a library. But also part of me is surprised at how many. Do you have a lot of people coming through, Carly?
We do. Especially like families. We get a ton of families, especially with like younger kids. Like we have some kids that'll come in with like literally a like basket on wheels, and they'll just fill it up. And we get a lot of like older folks, who are like more retired. But then like we'll still get like really busy people too, like people who just come in, go to the hold shelf, grab their book, and then use the shelf checkout. Like they've got their system down. So it's a pretty, wide mix of people that we still get.
That's cool.
That is really cool. Nice.
And I
So,
think,
go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to add that I think it's also like with libraries not going anywhere. I think it's because they also do a lot of things that aren't just checking out books. Like we have our community spaces, study tables in the back. We've got programs, we've got computers that people can use.
It
So it's
also
not
is free, like internet too.
exactly, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in a more vague sense, I guess that they're pretty much like a space, like a public space, a public service.
Yeah, exactly. They're just that nice.
And you
One of
do
the
have
few
the free
places.
printing and stuff too, right?
Ours isn't free, but I mean it's way cheaper than
Oh
it's
yeah, I
like
mean
10
not
cents a
free, but like
page.
you
Yeah.
don't have to. Yeah.
You don't have to like buy a coffee to use the space. You can just come and exist.
You just pay directly, like for the paper and ink, like what you're using.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh.
So why, Carly? Are there any reasons that you can think of as to why people still come?
Yeah, so I mean, I think
Like more like I'm talking to like more like abstract answers.
so, like just like in terms of
Drugs.
coming for the books
They
or
like
coming from like the
hallucinating.
space.
They like the hallucinations they get from those books they read.
Yeah,
Oh my
it's just like
gosh.
the scent of the books, people really enjoy that high.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, I can
Yeah,
attest
All
to that.
yeah.
reading is just reading a piece of paper and hallucinating for a few hours. So
Yeah.
I mean, you're not wrong.
when you
You're not
think
right.
about
What are you thinking about?
drugs, I mean,
Well, it's amazing what various combinations of 26 different characters on a piece of wood can do.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's true.
yeah.
Thing. I've always loved to have a physical copy of a book, just for the feel of it, like, just the feel of the outside, the weight that it has, flipping through the pages, of course, the smell. But also, I think one thing that I've recently realized is that it it encourages me to read more, especially like
Mm-hmm.
recently. I've been diagnosing myself as a completionist. So like at some point, to a flaw, it almost like completing something is more important than going through it.
It's
Fair
fair.
enough.
So, but like physical copies like help you with that, like because then I see my bookmark, and I see how it
That's
moves,
true.
through the book, and it can I keep reading it, because I
It's
feel like
definitely a very different experience than
yeah,
digital.
exactly.
I think that's part of why there's a big difference. Go ahead and
Oh, sorry. As I remember, me and a past girlfriend of mine, we were reading, Dracula on a Nook, and it was so painful because it seemed like it didn't end.
Oh yeah,
But
I can
then once I
imagine.
got the physical copy, it was so much nicer.
you can
'Cause it's
definitely
good
see
to
your
see
progress more.
progress. Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's part of why like Blockbuster dying versus libraries staying, viable. Like
Mhm.
difference in a physical movie and a streaming service. You're not really changing the experience at all. It's just whether you have access to it. As reading a physical book is such a different experience from reading a digital book. I think that's why it's, people still like even if you enjoy ebooks, that doesn't necessarily mean you don't ever want to read a physical book again because it's a very different experience. It's not
Yeah.
interchangeable really.
You could also argue that this is just like confirmation bias or whatever. I don't know what it's exactly called, but since we
That's true
all
too.
grew up with books, physical books, we want to say all this stuff because we like them.
That's fair too. I do think it's also interesting because a lot of the advantages of ebooks, you can also argue that there's some disadvantages too. Like one thing like with ebooks, we read all these things about like computer strain on your eyes. Um, like having too much screen time can like, be so bad for our health. And so, reading a physical book, a break from screen time. So I think there's still like little ways that we can argue that like physical books are still here for
Well, so
you.
actually, uh, like I've had to read about that quite a bit because like I work at a call center and then I play video games for free. I mean, on my free time, and then so I've actually been looking into it, and so far there aren't any studies that show like that screen time has any permanent effects. It's just the eye strain. On your eyes, and you also don't blink as much when you're looking at a screen. But they also say that like lots of like focusing and unfocusing on stuff at um, close up can also have the same effect on your eyes. It's not
Interesting.
as so it's like reading and stuff can do it too, but it's just that people won't usually read as much as or as long as they usually look at a screen. And so I mean, of course, there might be a few other similar differences too, since it might be you have more eye strain from looking at a screen because there's light involved. But I did also notice, like when I was in high school and reading um, stuff, that my eyes would do similar things to when they were tired, like after being on the computer a lot of the time. But like since now that I work at
Yeah.
at a place where my computer is, like I can definitely tell like when my eyes are tired, and like when I get off, sometimes you can see like the red lines on the edges of my eyes, like really um prominently. And like, I mean, I don't think I've ever had that from a book.
It's
So
fair. So do you
but
think
then
with
again, I've never
sleep?
read a book for 10 hours.
Yeah. I was gonna ask, so with what you were reading about like eye strain being a similar effect with both, like
Well,
focusing
it's actually
with
just the
both.
same eye strain kind of thing. But yeah, what were you saying?
So I was just gonna ask, have you read anything about like sleep? Like, because I've read that like much screen time at night can affect your sleep. So do you think? Have you seen anything about like if that's like a focus thing or if it's like
Oh, well,
a screen
I've
time?
definitely seen stuff about that, and it's not so much the screen as it is the blue light. And so a lot of things that people have to help them with the blue light are blue light glasses, which I actually have a pair, but they broke, so I haven't worn them. But there's also a software that I use that other people, there's other things like that they can use too. But if you might have it on your phone, it's sometimes called night mode, or
Yeah.
let me see what it's called here. But it basically changes the hue of the
Okay.
screen, so it minimizes the blue light that's sent out, but it makes your screen look oranger. But I mean, eventually you get used to it. But it is definitely better on the blue light, because our bodies are used to seeing blue light with like the sun and associating that with being awake, which is why it does affect sleep and things like that. So that definitely is an issue. But um, for
One
me
that like you can
personally, I
fix.
hmm?
You felt like one that you can fix with kind of like that changing light.
Oh yeah, I mean you can minimize it compared to like, I mean you can also minimize the eye strain, but that's a little bit more of you just not looking at it. There's not like glasses you could
Yeah.
wear to keep it, but like with this, it's more of like, how should I say, like the blue light is more of something you can like, there are ways to cope with it, and since you're aware of it, just being aware of it makes it better for you too, because you can know like, oh, if I'm going to go to bed, I probably shouldn't be having my screen on at full blast or something like that. But also the other thing too is that it does affect people differently, I think too. And
Mhm.
Okay.
like for me, I just know for me, I don't get affected by the blue light as much before going to bed. Sometimes it definitely does, but it's not like every single time. So it is kind of just a general statement, because there's and then there's people who have like insomnia, who are, it doesn't matter if they look at the blue screen or not, they still can't sleep kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's really
I've
interesting.
got an interesting definition from the World Wide Web. It says that light essentially is wavelength high energy blue light, and it says that it scatters more easily than other visible light. So it says because computer and digital devices emit a lot of blue light, this unfocused visual quote unquote noise reduces contrast and can contribute to digital eye strain. So I guess it's like it's just kind of I figured that it was a specific kind of wavelength, but
yeah, yeah.
it's interesting that it kind of just goes out and is very quickly.
Interesting. Huh.
C'est intéressant.
The more you
Very
know.
interesting. Yeah. And to bring it back to books, I guess that kind of ruins my health argument.
Well, I mean, this is all just I mean, you could argue that this is new because screens are constantly developing and changing, and we've only had them for
True,
however many
true.
years, and then compare that to books, and it's like books
Mhm.
have been around since, I mean, I guess
Okay.
parchments were
A couple
like the
thousand
first
years.
form, but yeah, I mean, you still had monks copying stuff, and you still had books kind of. So, I mean, I guess the most accessible books was like back when the printing press was, or the,
Yeah,
what was it?
that was
The
the
typewriter was
explosion.
made by George. or some German guy, and he
No,
was able to
that's the printing
mass-produce that.
press, not the typewriter.
The printing press. Yeah, the
Yeah.
printing press.
It
It was
was
one of the two.
Gutenberg?
oh, what's his name? Yes,
Yeah.
that's what it
Wasn't
was.
it start with a G?
I think it was it Johann Gutenberg?
Oh.
Yeah, that's right. He's Johann.
Gutenberg.
Yeah,
Gutenberg.
Gutenberg.
Gutenberg. That's what it was.
Yep. My friend did a presentation on this in high school, and I remember this for some reason. But I was like, "Oh, wow, interesting."
Amazing what sticks with you.
The what?
Amazing
Oh,
like
yeah,
just
yeah,
what
yeah.
sticks with you. Like
Mm.
cool experiences.
I don't remember anybody else's project, but I remember his project.
Remember that one?
Nice.
The important ones.
I don't know how important it was, but yeah.
So random question time. So what was the last book that y'all finished?
So I just finished, I think. Okay, so I'm currently reading like
Instruction
3
manual
books. So,
Nice.
Oh,
I think the last one I finished was The School of Good and Evil, which was like a middle grade fantasy
Ooh,
telling fairy tales.
that's cool.
It was fun.
Nice.
I cannot remember the name of that book that I finished. I mean, it's been a couple months, but
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of that book.
Good. I'm in the middle of what is it? 5, I think. No, 4. 4. I'm in the middle of 4.
Good.
I just finished Count of Monte Cristo, and that was fantastic. Huh?
I was asking how was it?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was so good. Yeah, I had kind of grown up seeing the 2002 movie with Jim Caviezel.
Great
And
movie.
yeah,
I don't know who was in it, but yeah, the movie was great. That's the only.
if
I
you,
think I was gonna read the book, but then I didn't. But maybe not. I don't remember.
yeah,
Maybe I did read the book.
the book is really good because it spans a longer time, and you get to see how every seed that he plants comes to fruition, and then finally comes all together for his big revenge plan. It's amazing.
That's
Um,
cool.
Yeah, I finished that one, then I started a science fiction series that I've been wanting to do called Foundation by Isaac Asimov,
Hmm.
and yeah, it's been good so far.
I'm just
I guess
casually
the
writing
last
these
book
down.
that I read, casually writing them down.
Yep, Isaac
I think-
Asimov is like one of the OG fiction authors. Like his books were first released in the 50s, and they were all like just full of all these ideas that we now are like commonplace.
Hmm.
It's insane.
I recognize his name, but I don't know if I've actually read any of his books.
Mhm.
Wow. That's what I
Oh.
read. You had me curious, so I had to walk upstairs to find it. I still had it on my nightstand. It's the book Rise of the Mystics by Ted Decker.
Nice.
Oh, Ted Decker is good.
Yeah.
Another one to add to my list.
Yeah, that was part 2. He came out with 2. It was the 49th Mystic and Rise of the Mystics.
Oh, he has more than 2 books, but yeah.
Well, no, I'm saying these are his 2 newest ones.
Yeah.
Of the series, yeah.
Yeah, of the series. Because it's a continuation of that Circle series that he did.
Oh, it is.
Oh,
I read almost all of those books.
Yeah,
Even
this is
the mini series, like with the younger kids or something.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, this is a continuation. This picks up right after those end.
Oh, okay.
Still have Red on my shelf. Your recommendation. I need to get started on the Circle series.
You definitely want to start from the beginning, from the first book. But technically speaking, you could start from any of them because it's a circle. But
Yeah, so long as you read them in order, you can start anywhere.
Okay.
yeah, I know. Well, technically, you can
Oh.
always start from there, but you're not gonna know what's going on if you do.
Well, true.
I mean, well, technically, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. It's just better to start from the beginning. Anyway,
So okay, so going from that, what's the percentage of like books that you've read that physical to digital? What's that proportion, that ratio that you guys have?
90-10.
90-10?
Unless you
Oh,
count
I'll
audiobooks, but I feel like that's a whole
Oh
different breed.
dang, that's a whole thing.
did you read those or did you listen to those?
Exactly, you know.
She plays audiobooks, but then mutes it and reads the closed captioning.
Yeah, there you go.
What?
That would be so much work. Oh my goodness.
Closed captioning for audiobooks.
Definitely like have been listening to audiobooks more often now because I've started listening to them on my way to work.
Nice.
I've really been
Oh, yeah.
enjoying it.
I did that with podcasts
Mm-hmm.
sometimes.
Yeah, same. I listen to more podcasts when we're talking about like spoken audio.
But to answer your question, Brayton, for me, I honestly don't think I've ever finished a digital book. I think I had like one of those Kindles or things a couple years ago, and I tried to get into it. I may have read one or two, but I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I always liked the hard copy better.
Mm-hmm.
And I've read lots of those, so
Yeah.
numbers aren't even close.
I've read a lot of what is it? Digital books because we only had a really selective library at the school I was at for high school and stuff. So I would like find one book from one series and then I didn't have any more, so I'd have to get them on Kindle or something.
I feel like
Makes
there's
I've read quite
definitely
a few,
lot
but
of series that do that. Like I did that with too.
yeah, it's probably like 80-20, but I also did stop reading a lot like once I got older just because I felt like I had so much from school to read and I was just burnt out from reading. So
That's
I still
fair.
don't read that much.
Yeah.
I only read like books that I know I will like.
Yeah, true. I
At
think
least right now anyways.
yeah. The one that I mentioned to you guys about like the one that where I like started Dracula, that's literally the only time. I don't think I've ever read a book online or like, digitally ever,
it's
at least
interesting.
recreationally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For like a broader survey, I did find like a survey on I think it was not just like a random article, but it was a study done by the Pew Research Center, and they interviewed a bunch of people, and of the 72% of adults who like had read a book in some format over the last year, and this was in 2019, 37% of them only read print books, 8% of them read both print and digital, and then only 7% read digital books only.
Wow.
So I thought that was really interesting.
Really?
And now here's playing devil's advocate, but could that be just out of like habit of getting physical copy, or do you, like it if as a society we're pointing more towards digital reading, would that happen?
I think that's an interesting question because like so like I read another article that was actually all the way back from 2015 that was talking about how print is going to be dead like before we even know it. As there's all these advantages, they're better for, economy or like from a business standpoint because authors get to keep more of like a better percentage of the profit if it's through an ebook as opposed to an audio or a physical book. And then it's also better from a like environmental standpoint because you're not using as much paper.
True.
it's cheaper to buy. I think it's interesting that there's still so many people, despite all the advantages, who just prefer books.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost kind of relate it. Dragon and Jackie, if you guys remember the conversation we had a couple episodes ago about, movie theaters, like going to the movie theaters with John Michael.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about the experience of, holding a book, feeling the pages, the smell of it, it's just the experience of having a hard copy versus the, just the kind of drab, dreary blue screen of a tablet or a phone or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like we really won't know whether it's out of habit or out of like old books are, better, better in terms of experience until we see like kind of this next generation grow up and become an adult. Because, we've all grown up with books. And so it's really not until, like my siblings' kids, their generation will be the ones that really grow up in the digital age of, reading on tablets as kids. Because, we never did that. Like, even if you had a Kindle, like, I didn't get a Kindle until I was 12. Even then, like, I could only buy books at, someone gave me a gift card.
Yeah.
I think it'll be interesting to see, like, once the next generation has grown up with the more digital, starts to kind of impact those statistics more.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, I don't really think that they're going to be getting rid of them anytime soon because, like physical books, I mean, what can you do with them if you get rid of them? Like, you gotta either burn them or, like, you can't really recycle them anyway. So they're not gonna
Yeah, I
be
definitely don't think they're
leaving any time until they just like fall apart or something.
Yeah.
Because, like, you see people will still be giving VHS tapes to Goodwill, and you still see them being sold in different places, even though you're not gonna like they're completely useless now. Like, it's just the nostalgia, I guess,
Yeah,
keeping
it's a
them
niche
alive.
market.
But you still see people donating them, and you still see them at like Goodwills and stuff. So it's hard to say like books. I mean, because books are a lot older than VHS tapes, and there's a lot more that you could get over a VHS versus like a book. Like,
Yeah.
there's a higher quality. There's different like formats, and then but you still see VHSs here, and you still see some people using them and stuff. So I mean, with books, it's the same type of thing, but it's probably if it does change, it's gonna be a lot different. I mean, a lot longer if it even happens.
I think
Makes sense.
like I was reading in Publishers Weekly, like even right now we're still seeing a rise in people buying physical books. So like I think it was like an 8% increase in just print sales from 2020 to 2021, then 8.2% from 2019 to 2020. So like there's still selling, print books. Like that's still like the biggest part of the publishing industry. I think it, like,
I mean,
to
and
your
you also
point,
have to charge your books too.
exactly, yeah. So I think to your point, it'll definitely be a long process if books do start to die out. The goal.
For sure. I was actually listening to a podcast actually on the way over to the place today, over to where I was going. And it's I'll share it with you guys if you want, but it's this guy who talks about the real business behind music, because he was talking about the business of like in the transition from like buying a physical album either on vinyl or CD, and nowadays with like the whole streaming industry and whatnot. But it's like how he actually points out how streaming has actually been worse and harder on artists than physical media it was. But it's interesting because he was talking about how like you were paying an album like on a CD or vinyl, than you would, nowadays on it digitally, because you bought it, you could listen to it like an infinite number of times.
Yeah, that's
But then
true.
now, like, in the streams, the digital, that could be easily be taken away, or it could bust in the masses, if it ever gets lost.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, it's kind of it's interesting, because it kind of, like, the way he explains it is not what you would think, because he kind of talks about the supposed advantages that you would think about, and the extreme accessibility of it all, but it actually comes at a cost, a big, to the music itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to translate that into our conversation on books, of, like, because you could buy it and read it so many times, and
Mm-hmm.
like you can use as many times as you wanted, as long as it care of it. But
Yeah.
again, that's kind of like why I bought so many physically.
Yeah.
I don't want to, like, be like, oh, I want to go and see this without paying for it, but then, or like, without paying for it every time, and then it's not there anymore, and I'm like, well, so yeah.
Well, thing with the streaming and stuff now is too, like, people don't often like the whole album. They only like certain songs, or they also
Yep.
they can't carry the physical copy with them the same way that they can carry the digital copy, because you could just have it on your phone or on your iPod if you still have one of those, or something small, and keep it with you, versus like a disc player or a vinyl player. You couldn't really
Yep.
carry that in your backpack, or even a tape kind of thing. So it's kind of,
That's true.
and you do music, I feel like you need that with music more than with a book, because I mean, you could technically say it's not different, but
He
That's
actually
interesting
mentions
too,
that.
because sorry, go ahead and continue.
That's all I was gonna say. You can go ahead.
Okay. I was just gonna add that, like, technically speaking, like with ebooks, like when you buy an ebook, that's your ebook. You can read it however many times. 5 years later, you still have those ebooks. Kind of going back to the nostalgia thing. Very different having a collection of books as ebooks and having them on your shelf. Like, there's definitely been ebooks that I've read, then been like, nope, I need this on my shelf, and then gone and bought a physical copy of.
Yeah.
Just because I need it in my collection.
Exactly.
It's like kind of the same, but it's also kind of not. Like, arguably, like, I do still have my ebook collection as opposed to streaming.
So you could argue that, like, the digital versions are, like, for those who are curious, and then that leads you, that can, if you do become, it's almost like a sample almost.
Yeah, and it's also like, it's more accessible because, like, ebooks are cheaper. Like, you can get Jane Austen for 99 cents or even for free on Amazon. Then, like, new books are going to be cheaper as an ebook than as a physical copy. And like, I can carry my entire library with me as opposed to carrying just one book.
yeah, that is true too.
For sure.
There are definitely, like,
Yeah, that is true too. With music, you can carry like thousands of songs.
Exactly, yeah.
Versus like, oh, I only can carry 3 discs with me today.
Mm-hmm.
True.
So there's definitely similarities, and, like, a theoretical standpoint, ebooks do make a lot more sense. But still.
See, that's also interesting with like books and novels and stuff like that. I always prefer physical copies, but it's interesting how, like, now that I've had to read so many research articles for school, I very much prefer to read research articles digitally, getting physical copies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is actually true, because it feels like it's so much easier to just sift through it and not actually read it.
Exactly.
True. Then you get the control.
And you could argue that it just comes down to me not being as invested in it, and that goes back to that.
That's fair. I feel like it's interesting too. Like you said that from a writer's standpoint, it's interesting that a lot of writers prefer to publish only as ebooks, as opposed to trying, like when they're self-publishing, as opposed to trying to print on demand or anything like that. I think it's interesting that like it would kind of make sense if you're thinking more like research papers. Like, oh yeah, it's super easy to just don't need a whole research paper in print. Then like for books, you make more money per book even if you're charging less, because you get more of a percentage of it. Mm-hmm. So a lot of authors like don't even care make a print book. But then like others are like, but I still want to have my book in print, kind of for that same nostalgia.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
There's just so many layers to it.
Very true. Yeah, it's interesting how in the arts, how that process can take place. How there's so many hoops to go through to get it from the creator to the appreciator.
Yeah, definitely. You guys heard, this is kind of off topic, but I was like talking to a coworker that was reading an article about digital arts, like people who are like spending millions to have like just like a digital copy of art. So I guess like because with Bitcoin becoming such a thing and like having that.
Yeah. Are you talking about like NFTs?
Yeah, that might be what it is. Sounds right.
Okay. Because that's like what's been going around, like with certain pictures, like JPEGs, like owned like material. You could own it and make money on it.
That might be what he was talking about. That sounds accurate.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Like I've only like heard this every once in a while about it. I'm gonna try and get a better explanation, but you guys can continue.
That does sound like what he was talking about. Like I didn't totally understand when he was describing it. I just looked up the definition, and I think this was what he was talking about.
That's rather interesting. I had not heard about that.
I just think it's such a fascinating concept to just like, because I think it started as a conversation about NFTs, but then I think he was talking about like also just like actual like artwork, like artists are focusing just on digital copies of their work to sell instead of having physical versions at all, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of also goes back to the point of like, do you want your work to be like one of a kind, or do you want it to be mass produced? Because you can look, my professor or my teachers in high school said, for art, like what's the difference between like a picture you see on a calendar versus one you see in a museum? Like they're both usually really good, but one is considered art or like valuable and one isn't. And so it's like how mass produced it is and how good it is, and then also like how available or easily accessible it is to have it. So it's
true.
kind of an interesting debate or mix.
Mm-hmm. So I've looked up on to what it is. So NFT stands for non-fungible token. Says, which basically means that it's one of a kind that belongs to you. So after looking at other definitions, I've come up with a good way of explaining it.
Wait, what are NFTs? Are these things people are talking about?
Yeah.
Nowadays, like you can do something with celebrities or something like that.
Well, it's something that's kind of around, but they're making it super individual. Because it can be like a picture, a GIF, an audio track, a tweet, even, and even videos and stuff. Any kind of digital information, honestly. But I've got a good way to explain it. So you know how with Pokemon cards, right, or any kind of trading cards thing, some are more valuable because they're rarer, right, or they're more rare. So there's not as many of that kind of printing, rather than the ones that are more common. Of course, by that little definition, there are more of those printed that are in circulation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So NFTs would pretty much be as if Pokemon, came out and said that, when they first started releasing their cards, their trading cards, if they only printed one of each,
Mm-hmm.
and then they sent.
Mm-hmm.
So that's essentially what NFTs are, because it says that it's the kind of the opposite of Bitcoin, because it says one Bitcoin can be traded for another Bitcoin.
Okay.
But it's not possible with NFTs, because each individual thing is individual. So you're pretty much like, it's like apples to oranges to pears to bananas to, it's that kind of thing.
Jackie's point is kind of like almost like a manufactured scarcity, where it's like technically digital could be more like the calendars, whereas you're making it so that this digital file is rare. It's only one of a kind.
Yeah, there you go.
It's really interesting.
It is really interesting. Yeah, it's like someone took and put a copyright on every single thing. So you couldn't copy and use it or anything, like, without having to pay. I think, or yeah, some kind. It has to do some kind of licensing. But yeah, anyways.
I just feel like the mindset of owning like that digital, like currency, digital, anything valuable, like that digital space, is just such an interesting concept. Like, you do with it, like, do you just like license it out and like rent it to people, like, kind of thing? Like, do you let people pay you to use it? Is it just like for your personal enjoyment?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I feel like it's just like, if you can get your hands on something that you can find that's so valuable, you could probably just snatch it, put your, copyright on it, and then sell it to the highest bidder.
Well, where do you even find it? Like, what? I still don't really understand the whole thing with NFTs.
Honestly, I don't know. It's said, so like, one of the pictures that it has as an example is Jan Cat. It's literally, that picture is an NFT.
Wait, but why? Like, what makes it an NFT? Did somebody make it? Or
from my understanding at this point, I'd just chalk it up to social convention.
But like, can't you just get a picture of it and then use it yourself without buying it?
I don't know. I think you could, but if it really is an NFT, and if someone whoever owns it finds you, they could pursue legal action.
That's really weird.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really weird. Anyways.
Sorry for the tangent. I just found it a really interesting subject, so I thought.
Honestly, though, yeah, it's interesting. I want to try and I always devote so much time to understanding all of this, but I never have the time.
It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
And well, stuff make every day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I want to. Is it alright if due to time, do you want to wrap it up, or do y'all have any other points that you want to pursue?
No, I'm good. Carly, thanks for
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on and talking to us about this. This is an interesting conversation.
I don't want to end the episode just yet. I wanted to have time for our segment at the end, and this is also kind of ties into something that Carly wanted to talk about, and I've been dying to talk about it on the show.
Mm-hmm.
So, time for nerd news with Nana.
Woo.
And
Yeah.
I think we need to talk about the spider in the room.
Yes.
Over there in the corner. You know, the cobwebs that had to be taken out.
The one that couldn't find his way home?
Exactly. So
how long has it been since it came out? 20 days?
Lord. It's been a month almost.
Yeah.
Because it came out the 17th.
Oh wow, yeah. It has
December.
almost been a month.
Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming all of y'all have watched it, right?
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I was not gonna have this one spoiled for me. I'm like, I'm not looking
Now,
on Instagram till I watch it.
That reminds me, Jackie, because I know that you don't usually watch trailers because you don't want things to be spoiled for you. It is insane how much money this movie has made, and yet on the part of Sony and Marvel, literally they've only done maybe 20 at most 20% of the marketing for this movie.
Yeah, that is true.
Everything has either been hype or rumors or even just fan-made stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Because it took them so long to release a poster for this movie that theaters all around the world started putting up fan-made posters because they had to put up something. Oh my gosh. It's insane. And yet this movie has done so well.
Because it was beautiful. It was a masterpiece.
Yeah, exactly. It is a masterpiece. Oh boy. Because it was like, it was meaningful, it was deep, it was compelling, it was funny, it was action, and it was so meme conscious, it was glorious.
Meme conscious, yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was, I mean, you know, you think about it, that whole movie was basically fan service.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Which is perfect.
But it didn't detract from the story, which I appreciated.
That was a really good balance of like this is definitely for the audience, but then it still fits with like it's definitely convenient, but it's not convenient, like if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's for the audience and we're playing on what you want. They did it in such a way that it fit the story and it all made sense and it wasn't like going in plot holes just to make somebody, laugh.
Exactly.
Yep. It has done the impossible, honestly, because it made people who weren't a fan of Tom Holland before now respect him. Because now he's out from under Tony Stark's shadow, in a way. And then also those who were more of a fan of Maguire or Garfield, they got that actor for the time.
Yeah.
And it's also generated hype for the scrapped sequels for each of them.
Yeah.
Because Sam Raimi had everything set up for a fourth Maguire movie, but then because of how not so well the third one did, Sony decided to scrap it. And then also they had so much lined up from Garfield's reboot, from after, for his future, but then because of how not so well Amazing Spider-Man 2 did, they scrapped all of those. But now after this movie, people are wanting, Spider-Man 4, Amazing Spider-Man 3, all that stuff. And it's, like, wouldn't have happened.
The interesting thing about the movie for me was also the ending sequence. Like as soon as I saw it, I knew what was gonna happen. I mean, I didn't know exactly what was gonna happen, but I knew like where it was gonna fit in because I was waiting for Venom to show up the entire movie.
Oh my gosh,
and I was like, no, he didn't. They didn't do it. And then at the end, I'm like, oh, this is it. And then I was kind of disappointed. Tom Hardy isn't gonna be, or at least doesn't look like he's gonna be the one in the MCU. But at the same time, it does make sense how they did it. At least right now, because I was like, ooh, a whole showdown between Venom and or Tom Hardy and Tom Holland would be great because they're both so great at acting. But at the same time, it would be weird because he is kind of a good guy in the Venom movies versus like needing a villain to fight Spider-Man. So it does kind of make sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so good, and they also set it up so perfectly for another round of a trilogy.
Yeah, that's true too.
Like without being overdone, like saturated, or he's not. People won't be tired of that many Spider-Man movies with him. Now they've kind of said it. They've kind of pressed a reset button.
Yeah.
That's my biggest problem with Marvel, is I keep thinking, okay, this is a perfect ending to Marvel movies, so now I can stop with this universe. Nope. Kidding.
Yeah, I feel like they're gonna keep going until they've run out of characters to do.
And they're all great movies, so it's not even like it's dragging on. Like there's too many. We need to stop now. It's all justified. It's all like, yes, we need this.
I can picture it now. It's gonna be 2060. And Marvel's running out of ideas, and they're going to start making.
Tom Holland's about to kick the bucket.
They've got, I don't know, Ball Boy and Blanket Man and Couch Woman. They're the new Avengers team. I think Ball Boy is actually a DC hero. Now that I think about it,
not sure. I will do the boopity boop boop research.
Boopity boop boop.
Yep. Oh my lord.
Was I right?
No. Well, it's kind of late. So, because y'all heard me say I'm going to do the boopity boop boop research. I literally started typing boopity boop boop.
That sounds about right.
Oh boy. Okay. All that's coming up is Ball Boy from like a newspaper serial. That's it. And it's pretty much just he's like a soccer player.
Yeah. I don't know. I distinctly remember there being a random, because it was like I don't know. It was one of those clickbait articles that I found one time of the top 10 dumbest heroes out of comic history, and I feel like he was one of them. Like he was literally just a kid who could turn himself into a ball, and he would bounce around.
I think I remember that one too.
Okay, it's Bouncing Boy, actually.
Bouncing Boy.
Wow.
Yep.
Marvel name
Comics.
Wrong.
I got the name.
How dare you?
I know. I'm sorry.
You've soiled this hero's reputation.
For Bouncing Boy.
His real name is Imhob.
Fantastic name.
That is a magical name.
Magical name.
There's no
his other superhero name is called Butterball.
Yeah, but
that's amazing. Nice.
Usually there's alliteration for hero names like Clark Kent, not Bruce Wayne. What was the other one?
Peter Parker, Reed
Richards,
Bruce Banner.
For some reason, I couldn't remember Spider-Man's name. Yeah, Bruce Banner. And there was another one too.
That makes you feel better. I almost said Tony Stark, and I was like, that is not.
That
Yeah.
is not.
But it's very interesting that they have that thing, and it kind of works, but at the same time, it's like it just seems like a good name at the same time. But it does kind of sound better, I guess, than just a normal name. But then again, Tony Stark and Steve Rogers sound good too. So
True.
It's all about the syllable counts, you know. Syllables gotta, have a good flow to them.
That's true.
Peter Parker.
Kind of have that matching, like up and down.
Steve Rogers. Tony Stark. Bing bang boom.
All right. Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about?
I think that was my thoughts. It was perfect.
Well, if there's nothing else to talk about, I do have an outro.
All right, hit it with us.
But do you know, real quick, do you guys know what D&D is, right?
Yes.
You're familiar with how you play it?
Actually, just started.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Newbie, but mostly familiar.
Oh, okay. But the general idea of what the game is or how you play, you guys are understanding it, right? Okay.
Yes.
So here is some D&D advice for a DM or a dungeon master for the viewers if you don't know who it is. Basically, Dungeons and Dragons is you have somebody who's the dungeon master and they write the story and lead the adventurers through it. But this is some D&D advice for the dungeon masters who write their campaigns. But if you are are you at a loss for a last-minute holiday gift for your players? Pick them up a book they've never read. And this kind of fits with our theme today. So pick them up a book they've never read. I'm getting each of my players one titled The Player's Handbook.
Oh my god.
Sometimes they need it.
Yes. It's actually true sometimes.
I'm definitely.
There's so many things to keep track of, but at the same time, it's like, I want to do this. You can't rolls a natural 20. Okay, well.
Okay.
And then you get into the areas of the one-sided dice where it's the DM says so.
True story.
Nice.
But that is the joke of the day, folks.
Thank
today.
you.
I hope that you enjoyed this cast of pods amongst multiple people who read books and try to read books and who are stacking books in their profession. But I hope that you all have a good night or day, rest of whatever it is you're having right now as you listen to this, all 18 of you subscribers. And I I hope this finds you well and you continue to be well. And this is where we cut it, guys. We're just gonna end it right there in editing.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Right. Well,
thank you guys again.
Anyways-
I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. No, we're not.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
Anyways,
All right.
thank you all for listening. Carly, thanks for being with us. This has
It
been.
doesn't matter. We already cut. This is past the point of cutting. It doesn't matter what you say from here on out.
I ain't gonna hear it.
Well, Drayton didn't get to do his saying.
All right, Drayton. Well, I guess we'll just leave it.
What?
You got to do your saying. You got to do your thing.
All
See you later,
fair
nut
in
jobs.
love and wear.
Yeah, all's good that ends good.
Okay, well.
Well, this didn't end good, so we'll leave it at
Yeah,
that.
that did not end good.
It is an ending anyway.
And everybody, go buy a book.
Yes.
Yeah,
Go buy
there
the
we go.
D&D Player's
Go buy a
Handbook.
book.
We give you permission.
It's better
Do
than
it,
the
do it yourself. Yes.
Yes. And we are off.
I'm just gonna
Okay,
leave.
I think it's actually we're waiting for Drayden to tell Greg to leave.